Hey guys, how's it going? I actually just got home a couple days ago from the first stop of the FLW Pro Circuit 2020. Super excited to get the year rolling with a decent finish. I walked away from that this last event with a 52nd place and a pretty solid check, so I can't really complain there. You know, going into practice, I really was going to key in on hydrilla. The lake was a couple feet low when we first got there. It was slowly rising as we fished the tournament, but it was a little low. So what that meant to me was that the hydrilla was really going to be a big player. The last year when we were there in 2019 for the first event of the season, the lake was like 8 or 9 feet high up in all the trees and bushes, and the hydrilla was so deep that it just didn't play like I wanted it to play. You know, guys still caught him out of it. I'd never been there before. I wasn't as familiar with grass fishing. Living here on Guntersville, I've gained a lot of experience with that. But anyway, that's what I wanted to focus on this time around when I went there. I really knew that that was potentially where the tournament could get won. You know, I know John Cox walked away with the victory like he always does. Unbelievable angler John is. But I know he fished hydrilla patches on the first and second day, and that's where he had his largest weight. But anytime you've got hydrilla, milfoil, really any grass present in a body of water, it's going to play a huge factor, especially early spring. And down in Texas, you know, even though it's January, this is early spring down there. So that was my focus going into it. So with that being said, I just want to do a little recap. I want to show you guys some clips of some fish catches on the water from my tournament, and I just wanted to share with you my thought process and my techniques that I utilized down there on the water, and sort of how I approached the hydrilla that I was fishing. You know, a go-to down on Sam Rayburn is a lipless crankbait. You know, that everybody that knows Sam Rayburn knows lipless crankbait. So that was one of my key baits this week, or this last week on Rayburn, was a lipless crank. And I was throwing this guy here. This is a 1/2 ounce Booyah, and this is the one knocker, or I think they call it one knock, I believe, or something like that. But as you can hear, just got one rattle in there. It thumps pretty good. This one got chewed on all week. I switched out these trebles to some Kamakiri treble hooks. You can find these on Nishine Lures website. These things are amazing. Honestly, guys, typically when you throw any kind of bait with a treble hook, you're going to have some, you know, fish loss. You're going to have some fish that jump off, or fish that pull off, or you hook them for a second, they come off. With these treble hooks, anything that I hooked, I landed. I did not have a fish come off in 5 days of fishing down there on Rayburn, and there's something to be said for that. So I would highly recommend checking these treble hooks out, especially when you're fishing a tournament when the bite's tough. You want to be able to put everything in the boat, and these Kemakiri trebles are the deal. I highly recommend them. But this is not a bait that, you know, nobody pays me to advertise this bait or anything. This is just a bait that I like throwing. That's a 1/2 ounce booyah. I believe they call this like sunset shad or something. But that's one of my key players, and I was throwing that on a new Phoenix M1. I've been playing around with these rods now for a couple weeks, and my gosh, I am in love. This thing is a sweet rod. As you can see there, it's got the vortex handle. So what this actually is the blank going all the way through the handle. Just a super killer rod. And I was throwing that with the 1/2 ounce booyah lipless on there. This is the 7'8" medium heavy. I like that 7'8", gives me a lot of, you know, rod to cast that bait out there really far, and it allows me to rip the grass off with ease. I don't have to really fight the grass. It's got a real nice fast tip. It has, you know, it's a moderate bending rod. So the front, you know, I'd say 1/3 of the rod bends pretty good, but then you hit pretty solid backbone, so you can really rip grass. Yet when you hook a fish and it pulls, it doesn't pull the hooks out. So I was throwing that on 16-pound fluorocarbon. It was actually the exact same line I was throwing my chatterbait on here. Or actually, this is the Thunder Cricket. I'll talk about that here in a second. But this here is the previous model. I still have some of these. I still love this rod. But this is the previous model M1. And then this is the revamped model. As you can see, quite a bit different looking rod there. But anyway, 7:2 to 1 gear ratio, kind of quicker gear ratio to rip it out of the grass and get your bait going again. But that is what caught the majority of my bass this week on Sam Rayburn. This guy's got teeth marks all over it. That other one's all teeth marked up. I had like one in practice that was, you know, probably just hair under 7 pounds, and caught some other really nice fish. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the big ones going in the tournament, but that is what played the most. I believe I weighed either 7 or 8 of my 10 fish on that bait on this rod. But yeah, that's what played the most for me down there. And I was fishing that anywhere from, you know, 3 to about 6 feet of in hydrilla. And then when I target that shallower hydrilla, so my key was to fish the different levels of hydrilla. I was catching fish all the way from a foot all the way out to about 8 or 9 feet. When I was fishing that mid-range, which is where most of my bites came, lipless crankbait was the deal. When I was fishing that shallower hydrilla, or even around some bushes or structure, I was picking up this Thunder Cricket here, which is I believe this is a Strike King Thunder Cricket. And I have a Yamamoto Seiko on the back there, 16-pound fluorocarbon. This is just like a bruised green pumpkin color. I actually retied that skirt myself. The skirts that come on these things tend to want to clump up, fall off, and so I tied that one on there myself. But that is what I caught. I believe I weighed 1 or 2 fish on this guy here. One of my bigger fish on the first day came on this, and I caught some nice ones in practice on that as well. But that was for my shallower hydrilla fishing. Same setup, 7'8" medium heavy rod, 16-pound fluoro. This was a 7:6 to 1 gear ratio, a little quicker, but relatively the same as the lipless. And let's see here, on the first day, that's what I weighed all my fish on, were those 2 baits. And then the second day, I caught my first 2 fish on the lipless, and then I really wanted to focus on fishing that little bit deeper hydrilla. I had a few spots where the hydrilla really tapered off nicely into that 7 to 9 foot range, and so in that, you know, scenario, I opted for this Nishine Lures Chippewa DD, and this is the BL, the blade, but I actually took the blade off. I wanted it to be a little more subtle since there was a lot of pressure. But anyway, this is in the BPB chartreuse shad. This is one of my favorite colors when the water has a little bit of an off, you know, like stain to it. Just a killer shad imitation. I mean, it can even imitate like a bluegill. It's got like an orange belly, but that's what I caught. Probably my largest or second largest fish on the second day. I only caught 1 on this, but it was one of my, you know, really key fish that helped me get that 52nd place finish. And I was throwing that here on a X10. This is a 7-foot cranking rod. You could throw this on the X12. I just happened to pick up the X10. The X12, it's pretty much the same rod, same, you know, composite blank. It's just a 6-inch longer rod. It's a 7.6. This is a 7-foot. But killer crankbait setup there. I was throwing this on a little slower gear ratio. I believe this is a 6 something to 1. What is it? A 6.8 to 1. Just a little slower. Allows you to slow down and not have to really think about it. And then I was throwing that on 12-pound fluorocarbon. But that weighed in one of my larger fish on the second day. So then as far as fishing, you know, slower in the grass, I didn't actually weigh any fish on this, but this kind of clued me in practice to where some fish were, and it did put some fish in the boat in the tournament, just nothing that I weighed, but it definitely got bit, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. And that was a little flashy swimmer with a Gambler easy swimmer on there, and I rotated between Phantom, this color here, and then Tennessee Shad, which is a little bit more clear natural color, just depending on water clarity and you know, cloud conditions. If it was cloudy, I was throwing this. If it was sunny or cloudy or dirtier water, I was throwing this. And if it was sunny, clearer water, I was throwing that Tennessee Shad. But killer little setup there, just a little underspin, weedless underspin. And I was throwing that on a 7'4" medium heavy on a slower gear ratio reel as well, with I believe 15 or 16 pound fluoro. But that was another key bait. You know, I just rotated through baits in the grass in order to figure out, you know, what depth I was fishing. I would change baits. But those are, so far, that's pretty much what I fished in the hydrilla. And then on the second day, I had this epiphany that there was this little bush line or bush clump kind of near where I was fishing, and I really wanted to fish it because it had some muddy water blowing in there, had some wind kind of going over it, and I thought, man, I need to throw something up in there. So I grabbed my double Colorado spinnerbait here, and I have a Gambler Little Easy on the back, and I believe I can't remember what color this is, but it's a nice natural color, bait fish color, matches up well with that bluegill color spinnerbait there. But I started throwing that around first cast. I caught a little one, and then I knew I was maybe getting onto something. I threw it up next to a piece of brush, and boom, smoked a little one. And so I decided, all right, I'm gonna work this whole little isolated patch of brush. It had the perfect wind, it just felt right. And so I used my gut, I fished it, caught that first fish, and then I kept working it, and I worked around the outside edge, and I picked up my biggest or second biggest, you know, of the day. The other bigger one was on that Chippewa, but that bait right there was key for getting a solid bite on the second day. If I hadn't picked that up, I definitely would have weighed in less weight. So I just really kept my mind open. I didn't catch any giant fish, but I did catch enough to cut a solid check and have a decent finish in points, and you know, satisfied with it for the first event of the season. But going into Florida, I've got some good points rolling, 52nd place, and I believe I can keep this momentum going into the next event. And I'm feeling good about the season. I'm fishing good right now, fishing instinctually, and stay tuned, guys. I'm excited to get down to Florida on the Harris chain. We're actually heading out here in a day, or actually on Wednesday, and I'm gonna get some practice in down there, some pre-practice. So I'm excited, guys. Stay tuned for the rest of the season, and I'm excited to share it with you. Thanks, guys.